Seattle Seahawks. Obviously, you got your guy Russell Wilson at the top as usual. Are they going to? I mean, what are the big changes, if any, in the offseason that we should be looking at? I feel like we know the Seahawks really well. We have a certain sense of what kind of team they are. Are they still that kind of team?
Well, that's a great question, Nat, because they did fire Brian Schottenheimer after years of him being the bane of fantasy owners' existence, running just Russ is throwing on pace.
We're not letting Russ cook?
Never letting Russ cook. He was on pace for nearly 52 touchdowns last year at the midway point. Ended up throwing only 12 over the second half of the season compared to 24 in his first 8 games. Literally, cut his touchdowns in half because they just went back into the shell as a turtle. And finally, they fired this guy. He's gone. And that does give me a little faith they might shake things up. But who they bring in, Shane Waldron, over from the Rams, who we were just talking about. He was their passing game coordinator. We've obviously seen a great explosive pass attack. We had Bob Condotta on the podcast not too long ago, said they're using a ton more motion, a lot more unique snap formations, a lot of different audibles and plays they can come out of the same. Everything looks the same, and they do all these motions to confuse the defense. He thinks it's going to be just a much more varied, diverse attack, but he didn't think it's going to be a significantly pass-happier attack, given, as we said, McVay is based on the run, the play action, marrying the run and pass games. So he does think it's still going to be a heavy leaning on the run, especially as long as Pete Carroll is always there. So he did caution us, even though I think it's going to be a more creative attack, a little bit more downfield, and as well as letting his receivers get more yak opportunities, he did caution us overreacting and thinking, okay, now suddenly Russ is going to be slinging it 650 times a year. He didn't buy that at all.
Now, you do like Russ's projections. I mean, you got him as your QB6/QB7. You like him for 39 touchdowns against only 9 picks. You like him for 500 rushing yards, only getting in the end zone twice. Those are real numbers. You like him slightly less than Kyler Murray, basically. Yeah,
just a little bit less. I think he has a little bit less of that Konami upside. He's not quite the athlete that Kyler Murray is. Doesn't have quite, that type of upside rushing-wise.
Pretty good athlete.
Still a good athlete, though. Still a very good athlete, and maybe the best arm besides, Mahomes and a handful of others in the league. As accurate of a deep passer as you can find. So, 4,600 yards, as you said, 39-10 touchdown interception ratio. Still thinking this guy has a great year. That's pretty in line with what we've come to expect with Russ. It's just not what I was hoping to project, like Russ cooking all over the place, that early season monster we had. I think we see that every now and again, but it's not going to be that crazy 8-game stretch now suddenly for the full season. No, I think he's going to have a good, solid, dependable Rush year that we've come to know and expect. But nothing, I don't think this Waldron change is going to significantly boost his stock.
All right, at running back, it's the Chris Carson show, as usual. You've got him projected as your RB15 on your big board, RB17, so you're right in the same ballpark. You like him for about 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. But noteworthy, in my opinion, you also have Rashad Penny scoring 9 times.
I think that's a 5 there, Nat, not 9. No way. Really? Oh, receiving touchdowns. He has way too many.
No,
you're right. That's.
Did I read it wrong?
Nope, you read it right, and that should not be the case. I don't know how that snuck in there.
Okay, well, I mean, that's a whole thing I wrote. I was like, I've written here on my document, really? You think Rashad Penny's going to score 9 times? Why?
Good Lord, no. No, I just adjusted that. And so that might give a little bit of a hit to Russ now going from 39 touchdowns to 36. Taking those away. Maybe he scores 1 through the air.
He's losing points right here before the season even starts.
Yeah, there's no way that happens.
So all you bloggers out there that were ready to, put out a hit piece on the Wolf liking Rashad Penny way more than you thought he should, you can just put away your keyboards because that was a typo.
Exactly. Yeah, that was a typo. No 9 touchdown seasons come for Rashad Penny, who they are saying looks lighter, looks faster in camp. Condotta was saying if this guy is looking this good throughout the season, he should get about a third to maybe even 40% of the workload, and that's kind of how they've always done it with Carson. He's always the guy for 60-ish% of the work, and there's always some people, whether it's Hyde, Matt, there's always somebody, Alex Collins, waiting there. But Carson is going to be that guy. Early in that season last year, he was a top 7 running back in that offense when it was cooking. But as I said, I don't know that I expect him to get fully cooking. Where I did project him for a decent bump, though, with Waldron They married the run and pass games, which means they throw to the running back a lot, out of play action. They run
Carson's a good receiver.
He is a good receiver, sneaky good. Not a lot of people give him enough credit for it. So I have him projected now for 64 targets and 51 receptions, 396 yards, and 2 TDs through the air. That brings him to right around 1,400 total yards, 11 total TDs. If Carson can stay healthy, that's the thing. He's missed at least 2 games every single year. And it's tough to do these projections because you can't really work in like only 14 games played. I really wish you could, because I'm not going to project him for a full season. That's, of course, if he played 17, what I think he does. So I would say you're going to get about that level of production for maybe 13 games is what I'm expecting out of him.
All right. I mean, that's still a good season, like you said, around your RB15. Receivers, DK and Tyler Lockett. Obviously, we talked about DK a little earlier when we were talking about the Rams. You've got him projected as your wide receiver 12, but on your big board, you went up to 6. I mean, he's about as sexy of a receiver option as possible. I did an absolutely terrible draft, dynasty draft, RSJ. I was not prepared coming in, but I did make sure I picked up DK because if there's anybody I want to root for the next 10 years, it's probably that guy. You got Tyler Lockett as your 18 and 19, so you're pretty consistent there. You like them each to score 10 touchdowns. I don't know. Personally, I mean, on your projection board, you got DK at 12, Lockett at 16. I think that's too close. I just think DK is a much more consistent option. Lockett did have a couple games where he just went crazy last year. But, man, I would imagine, since their numbers from last year are pretty similar, I'd imagine he had a bunch of games where he did nothing, too.
Yeah, he did. It was so boom or bust for Lockett, and I think it would probably be pretty similar this year. Now, that might stabilize a little bit as again, Waldron generating more yak opportunities. I do think a lot of that quick strike could play into both DK and Lockett's favor in terms of their catch percentages and all that. But I do have, as you see here, DK projected for 133 targets, the top of the totem pole. And I do, as you said, have a big gap with my gut rankings in terms of, instead of driving out the numbers here. But Lockett might be the type that could be a little more dangerous in this type of system after the catch. Not that DK can't do it. He's one of the most dangerous threats in the league.
Fast.
But he is more dangerous, I think, when he's streaking down the field, no matter who's with him. You can't run with him. He could leap over you. And I still think he's going to be used much more in that way, where I could see Lockett getting a bigger bump in those. He is also great downfield, tracking. Him and Russ have that ridiculous chemistry. I think yak opportunities are going to be a little more plentiful for him. So in reception leagues, PPR full, I have actually Lockett projected for more receptions at 92, despite seeing less targets, 1,021 yards, 10 TDs, as you said, for both of them. So they are pretty close. And there's really not another receiver that I'm interested in from this offense. Those two at 23, 22, they're going to take up over half of Russ's attention, in my opinion, besides, of course, Gerald Everett. And that's where I think we're moving next.
So before we move to Everett, I mean, obviously I'm a huge DK truther, but I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, you got DK at 6, Lockett at 19 on your big board. I mean, if we think they're going to be even halfway comparable, is Lockett a steal? I mean, is Lockett somebody you might want to be? I mean, you know what I mean? I don't know. That's a big discrepancy for guys who maybe kind of possibly would have similar numbers.
Yeah, I think I'm closer to almost bumping DK down than I would be bumping Lockett up. I guess where that comes in is DK was a little bit steadier throughout the year. Even though he is the bigger play guy, he, for whatever reason, had more consistent output, whereas Lockett would have that 50-point day on Sunday Night Football and then disappear for multiple weeks. And I did ask Bob Condota, does that get any more consistent? And he said, I don't know, maybe more yak opportunities, but I still think you're going to see a bit of that boom-bust nature for Tyler Lockett. So I think that's kind of baked into that discrepancy. Right. DK, you're going to get that more. You know what you're getting more often on a game-to-game basis, whereas Lockett, I think it's just a bit more boom or busty.
It's so cool to own DK, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's scary. The intimidation factor you bring to the fantasy field, your opponents see DK Metcalf lined against him. It's right. You could have 150 and 2 dropped on you in the first half. That's probably why he's probably 6.
Right. That's exactly right. That's why he's 6. You can say it. It's okay. Exactly. All right, Gerald Everett, real quick, finishing up. You got him as your tight end 14 on projections, tight end 16 on the big board. You like him for 62 catches and 7 touchdowns. You got him as like a borderline starter.
Yeah, 93 targets is 3rd on the totem pole here, and that's kind of in line with Bob was saying. He seems to be emerging as the number 3 weapon in the pass game here. A fringe starter. Now, Russell Wilson we saw with Jimmy Graham a few seasons ago, Loved his tight ends in the red zone when he has the right guy. Jacob Hollister. Like we've seen guys that are nobodies put up these massive seasons touchdowns wise. Whereas they're saying Everett is also bringing a bit more juice, and he comes over from Shane Waldron with the Rams, bringing some of that juice too. So as you said, 62 catches, 651 yards, and 7 touchdowns. The yardage isn't so high, but 7 touchdowns, I could see that bumping up to 10 if he ends up really forging that chemistry, as we're saying there. So I think there's a bit of a ceiling there with Everett. He's kind of moving up into the tier of like high-end tight end twos. I don't want him as my starter, but if I can get him as my second, I'm pretty excited about it. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.